Okay, we're gonna get started back up. Thanks, everybody. My name is Kelly Kaufman. I am Division Counsel here. I'm sorry, I am Corporate Finance Counsel with the Division of Securities. We are very lucky here that we have our regulatory panel with us, Kristen Hutchins. She's the Director of Policy and Government Affairs and Policy Counsel for NASA. Kristen is also an adjunct professor with American University, Washington College of Law, and previously held policy and legal roles at the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board and the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Kristen has conducted briefings for members of Congress and published articles in the American Banker, The Hill, and the German Law Journal. I want to thank you for being here today, and let's get started.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Thank you to the Ohio team, Andrea, Kelly, David, and all. Really appreciate the warm welcome. NASA's grateful to be involved again this year in this important event. We have gotten really innovative on Beaver today with the content for this panel. Originally, we were going to have colleagues from our federal partners, and that hasn't worked out. So we are excited to just increase the amount of state information that we will be communicating to you here today. I was thinking about, okay, how in 20 minutes do I do justice to the terrific work that states have been doing in this area over certainly the last several months and years. Y'all, I'm going to give a stab. There's no way you can do it justice, but I'll walk you through some highlights in an effort to be inclusive of the students we have in the room and listening here today. I have added some NASA 101 content. Thank you for the folks in the room with seasoned and veteran years for letting us add in this supportive information. We'll get started quickly and with a quick walkthrough of just NASA. What is it? We are the North American Securities Administrators Association. We've been around for a long time. We have 68 members, 50 U.S. states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, 13 Canadian provinces, and we represent the securities regulator from Mexico. When I do my work on behalf of NASA, I am speaking on behalf of our domestic members, so you will, the content I'm presenting today is certainly through that lens. NASA has a corporate office, and so if you're in DC and you're facing Union Station, to the right of you is the SEC. To the left of you on First Street, there's a building where a group of us, the corporate staff, sit, and we have the privilege and responsibility of supporting regulators who are throughout the 68 jurisdictions that I just highlighted for you. As an organization, we are run by a board of directors. They serve terms, and we are grateful and excited that our leadership has eyes and ears on all areas of the country. Those insights inform decisions that we make in everything we do as an organization. For the present NASA year, we are led by President Marty Rock Gibson of the great state of Kentucky. Her successor will be Elizabeth Bowling of Tennessee. So in addition to this board structure that we have, we are run largely through sections, committees, and project groups. Importantly, we have sections who oversee important work that we do around broker-dealer registration or regulation, corporation finance, enforcement, investment advisory work, and investor education. Highlighted on the screen, and I'm not sure this slide has actually been showing. So we're gonna, here we go. All right, we are in action. Highlighted here on the screen are the individuals who will be leading these sections in this year. Again, an effort has been made to make sure that we are inclusive in our representation, having eyes and ears on the ground all across the country, and that rich data about what's happening with small businesses, with innovators, and with investors feeds into all of the work that we do. NASA as an organization has for many decades had a vision that's pretty consistent. We focus and prioritize on protecting investors from fraud. We educate investors, we support small businesses in our neighborhoods and communities, and just overall, we're really trying to ensure the integrity of our capital markets that power our economies. It would take many hours to walk through the activities that NASA takes on a recurring and bespoke basis. The ones I highlighted on the screen here is just an effort to give you a sense of the many work streams we have going on throughout the organization at any given time. Importantly, we are a fantastic tool that exists in the United States to create ongoing coordination and communication among state regulators as well as between state and federal regulators. We do have many statements of policy and model acts all available on our website. We have ongoing dialogue with industry. I see industry stakeholders here in the room today where I look forward to our annual touch points. It really helps us gather information we need to be making smart decisions about how we deploy our resources to help businesses and investors. So that is the quick NASA 101. I will transition now, again staying on theme for this important conference, to talk about the new NASA Enforcement Report. This is a publication that we have done for over a decade now. Our NASA Enforcement section spearheads it. We published it last week, so it is literally hot off the press. It is a document that endeavors to capture in a quick way data that has been submitted by our U.S. NASA members about the enforcement work they have done the prior year. As I thought through how should I deliver a few quick highlights about this, where I landed was an effort to draw out some information that really does intersect with some of the advocacy NASA is doing right now on Capitol Hill to ensure that in this new federal market structure that is created, we continue to preserve the important role of the states. So first, just the quick snapshot of the data from 2024. Members are excited and to report that over 9,000 active investigations occurred, or about 9,000 active investigations occurred, and about 1,200 enforcement actions were completed. It is the case that the bulk of this important work, both at the investigation and resolution stage, did tie to some sort of activity where technology was used to get at an investor's hard-earned money. So it's a theme we'll come back here in a second to talk about, but it's certainly something to highlight. If you look back to enforcement reports on NASA's website from 2013, that is the first one that we have published. If you run a word like technology, crypto, Bitcoin, it doesn't appear anywhere in the report. In fact, the first year where we used the word crypto was 2017. So for me personally, it's been interesting to see just the full evolution over the last 10 years. We've gone from talking about enforcement in a largely non-tech way to talking about it in a completely through a tech lens. Continuing now to another takeaway from the report that I want to highlight, it is the data around referrals. In the United States, we're really excited and proud that there's ongoing collaboration and partnership between the states and our federal partners. And it is the case that much of the enforcement work that the states does comes by way of a referral from a federal partner. And there are all sorts of reasons for why that happens. It could be that the regulators who are closest to the community are in fact the best people to go and follow up, figure out what happened, take those depositions, etc. If one were in this debate about federal market structure to take away tools from the states to continue doing that great work, there's a large amount of referral information that would have to be redirected elsewhere. Transitioning now to talking about monetary relief. As we all know, in this country, there's been an ongoing debate for decades, respectful, constructive, about to what extent should we be fining financial institutions, penalizing them in addition to just securing people's money and returning it to them. It is the case when you look at the data that NASA publishes on behalf of our members. What it shows is states are very focused on restitution. They make an effort as best you can to use the tools they have to return people's hard-earned money back to them. So again, as we think through federal market structure policy debates, this is something to keep an eye on. The states are laser focused on that, and we know it's of great importance to citizens throughout the United States. I'll just, in the interest of picking up some time, skip over this slide. Please do take a look at the entire enforcement report. If you'd like a copy of it, you can reach out to me. It's kHutchins@nasaa.org. There's this visual and many others that really just helps us all see many of the themes that we're talking about here today. So transitioning now, again, my challenge to myself is to quickly give you some highlights of great work that the states are doing that is on theme with this topic for this conference. I want to take a moment to talk about investor education. It is the case that we as an organization are very proud of our enforcement work, and the press certainly covers it. Maybe a little less covered is the investor education work. There's a lot of it, and it certainly is a tool that my members are committed to deploying to the end of preventing and mitigating harm before it happens. We work regularly with our federal counterparts on investor advisories, and we leverage all the relationships one can to make sure the information is being disseminated in communities all across the United States. This year alone, we've worked on 6 bulletins. I've highlighted here on the screen just the names of, or the titles of the bulletins. What I would offer, and this may be evident from the titles, is that we are doing a fair bit of education related to fintech and crypto. And how did that come to be? Well, you'll recall that earlier in the slide deck, I showed you the section committees and the leadership. We do have an entire group of regulators who are dedicated to brainstorming around what are the education needs, what should we create, and part of how they come up with that list is just talking about what they're seeing and hearing on the ground. What are the questions they are getting from their community? And that, for this year, has resulted in a fair bit of content trying to provide information that's responsive to their questions. Again, all of this is available on the NASA website. I'll transition now to actually a video. NASA does have its own videos, but there's a video I want to play that was created by one of our state securities regulators. This is our Indiana member. This is a video that we have been showing. It's illustrative of content you may be able to tap into if you consider reaching out to your state securities regulator. This particular member, Indiana, I know has used it in her advocacy on Capitol Hill to try to communicate clearly to Congress how important it is that her authority is preserved so she can continue to do great work.
It just flashed in front of me. Warning, warning. It scared you to death.
While Linda was home on her computer, a warning popped up on her screen, advising her to call a number. The person on the other end said he checked her computer and found viruses, fraudulent purchases, and told her that her bank account had been compromised.
And he wanted me to give him the phone number off the back of my debit card, which I did. He supposedly called.
The suspect directed Linda to transfer her money to a different account, and they'd purchase gold bars that supposedly would be held at the U.S. Treasury Department for safekeeping.
It was like I was brainwashed. They just used fear and they terrified you. And he was so compassionate, come across so compassionate, so concerned.
Phone conversations continued, and Linda's fears continued to intensify. The suspect kept requesting more, and Linda kept clearing her accounts.
Taking money out of my savings at the bank, at that time buying Bitcoin. And then once that was all gone, transferring my IRA money to my bank, and then having that wire transferred to the gold shop to buy gold.
Linda was beyond scared and now financially strapped. Her bank became concerned and alerted authorities.
It's pretty common for them not to want to come forward and be a victim.
Detective Gary Aker with the Hancock County Sheriff's Department has seen an increase in fraud and scam cases, getting several calls every week.
These victims could be your grandma or your mom or aunt or somebody in your family, and then although it may seem kind of a small deal to you, it's a really big deal to that victim and their family.
They prey on older people and people who are widows or widowers. They're so sympathetic and they're so nice. And everything sounds so logical.
Linda's case involves international scammers, and she lost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I was just panicked. You know, I was just full steam ahead believing this guy.
Authorities ended up tracking down the guy, which doesn't always happen, but they are confident there are more suspects involved. Linda's case is moving through court while she's working on forgiving herself.
Go to the police. Don't trust these people on the phone that you've not seen, because it's a mess. I'm in a mess now, and I just keep praying. God makes a way out of this mess for me.
So thank you for watching that with me. It's for me, it was a tough video to see the first time. I know I've been in congressional briefings where we showed this, and it really does take some people's breath away. So just really, I'm proud to highlight both that video, but many other educational tools that state securities regulators are creating. Again, I'd be excited to be a resource for you if you'd like to consider reaching out and just learning more about the information that we have available, should it be of use to you and your contacts. Just staying on the theme of talking about the great work that NASA and state securities regulators are doing, I'll talk a bit about a great example of state securities regulators coming together, swapping notes, and saying, how do we move the needle just a little bit to make things better for small businesses, investors across the United States? A few years ago, our state legislation committee came together and they had an observation. It was often the case that they were able to secure restitution for some victims, but it wasn't everything. There often was just not enough money to go around. So they huddled and looked to the opportunity to create model legislation that can be used to set up state-level programs to assist victims of securities fraud. This Model Act has inspired several states to implement a restitution fund program, including Ohio. Each year, the state legislation committee talks about the programs, what's working, what's not. I don't have, a survey results for you or anything of that nature, but I can say that just through those conversations, it's evident that these funds are being used to help victims of crypto fraud. So an important data point to note in this ecosystem of policymakers coming together and thinking about how do we think about the regulation and future market structure in a way that's supportive to helping fraud victims. If I may, I'll turn now to Kelly to talk a bit about some Ohio legislation.
Sure. First, I do want to mention the Ohio Investor Recovery Fund has provided millions of dollars in relief to Ohio residents since August of 2022. The fund offers eligible victims of securities-related crimes up to 25% of their total loss, with a maximum award of $25,000. And you'll hear more about that fund from the next panel. The Ohio Data Protection Act of 2018 acknowledged for the first time the legitimacy of blockchain transactions as enforceable electronic transactions, and it also created an affirmative defense to tort actions against eligible businesses for claims related to data breaches. The act affirmed that both electronic records and electronic signatures may be created through the use of blockchain technology by modifying the existing statutory definitions of electronic record and electronic signature to include references to blockchain technology. As Kristen mentioned, our division provides resources and information on cryptocurrencies and advises residents to exercise caution and do their research before investing in cryptocurrencies. The regulatory oversight involves enforcement of our existing securities laws, which will to prevent fraud, which will be discussed by our next panel. Also, cryptocurrency exchanges in Ohio are required to obtain a money transmitter license, which is issued by the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Financial Institutions. A few more recent bills have been introduced in Ohio to potentially make crypto more accessible to our residents. The Ohio Blockchain Basics Act, which is House Bill 116, would ensure that crypto owners can use their digital assets to pay for goods and services, as well as protect the currency from certain taxes. This bill exempts digital asset payments of under $200 from state capital gains taxes. It also exempts certain digital asset activities from, as I mentioned, the money transmitting licensing, and protects the right of individuals to mine crypto at home and of commercial enterprises to mine in industrial zones. However, local zoning ordinances do take precedence over individual rights. Finally, in the bill, the state retirement funds would be required to study the risks and benefits of the cryptocurrency exchange-traded funds and report back to the General Assembly. House Bill 116 has passed the House and is now before the Senate, the Ohio Senate. A couple other items. One item that has seen less movement is Senate Bill 57, which was introduced in January of this year, and it creates an Ohio Bitcoin Reserve Fund to be managed by the state treasurer. Senate Bill 57 allows Ohioans to pay their taxes and fees in Bitcoin. It also allows residents to donate Bitcoin to the fund. The bill has been referred to the Committee on Financial Institutions, Insurance, and Technology. Similarly, the Strategic Cryptocurrency Reserve Bill, introduced in January as House Bill 18, has been referred to the House Committee on Technology and Innovation. This bill allows investment of up to 10% of the state's general revenue, budget stabilization, and deferred private trust funds. House Bill 18, which is permissive but not mandatory, would allow Ohio State's treasurer to invest in high-value digital assets in the general or reserve fund. Now, an amendment has been introduced to expand the scope of this to potential investments to include more traditional assets like bonds or exchange trade bonds.
For that information. Well, if we're ready, we'll start wrapping up the presentation portion of this discussion by talking a bit about the preservation of state securities. I've sprinkled some nuggets leading up to this to set the stage for talking about the topic that really is front and center on the minds of state securities regulators right now. As an organization, we come together every 2 years to publish a federal policy agenda. It's available on our website. We published one at the start of this year. How it comes together is we survey our U.S. NASA members. We ask them to help us think through our principles, our top requests for Congress, and come up with the list. This year, as you might imagine, there was a lot of discussion about the advocacy we would be doing on federal market structure legislation. We have been active for several years now in Congress on these bills. Most recently, the bulk of our attention has been on the RFIA. We continue to engage with Senate offices broadly and surgically. Top of mind for our state securities regulators at this time is the need to preserve state anti-fraud authority, as well as status quo licensing and registration and regulation of broker-dealers and investment advisors. Certainly a few footnotes around how I said that, and I'm sure the securities reg experts in this room could call me out on some of those footnotes, but that big picture is what we aspire to do here in these important discussions. The lens through which we are calling for changes to the RFIA is the SAFE Act, Sport Anti-Fraud Enforcement Act. We have legislation that's written, and we are talking with congressional offices about making changes to the bill. One of the reasons we wanted to highlight it here today is NASA is actively reaching out to our partners, our collaborators, innovators across industry, government, universities, to make you aware that we welcome and we look forward to collaborating with you on how we send a clear message that it is important to maintain state authority for so many reasons, the education, the policy making, the enforcement, these relationships here in the room. It's very important that for the success of this new market structure that the states remain a part of it. So that is my humble pitch. Thank you all for listening and the care and attention and having such good humor about my need for another cup of coffee. Clearly didn't get the slides going forward right this morning. You will receive a copy of the slides, but I think that's the overview we hope to deliver, and we can turn to some questions.
Yeah, I want to start out with a few questions, and I'm going to go back to the 2025 enforcement report. How does that compare to previous reports?
Yeah, so I talked a bit about, I spent some time, I thought about this question, I was like, ooh, okay, how do we provide a thoughtful answer here? And I did go back and I searched some keyword terms across the earliest ones against more recent ones. And for me, that was a huge takeaway. You know, we are well beyond the days where we're talking about enforcement through a paper-based lens. It's all things online, internet, blockchain, crypto, etc. And that's a reflection of the cases we're taking and what we're hearing from investors about where they have been harmed and want to see state securities regulators try to help them. In terms of other interesting observations, we continue to see year over year a steady stream of referrals from our federal partners to us to the point where it's part of the system right now. You know, that wasn't a one-off, that's every single year we're seeing that.
Piggybacking off of that, is the report the only way for the public and policymakers to stay on top of NASA's enforcement trends?
Oh, and So NASA is an organization. We have 2 conferences. We invite everyone in the room to consider attending them if you haven't had an opportunity to do so. We hold a spring public policy symposium that is in Washington, D.C. It's a great opportunity. It's an afternoon to learn and hear directly from enforcement leaders throughout NASA. In addition, we have a fall conference. That one travels. It's usually in September or October. Most recently, we were in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we look to be in great places like Chicago and Los Angeles in the upcoming years.
We talked about the restitution funds that other states have put in place, and Ohio's restitution fund. Thanks for up. Are there NASA model acts that can be tools for fighting fraud, and including fraud related to crypto?
Indeed. I'll highlight 2 of them here today. There's many more. Happy to connect colleagues here in the room with members of our state legislation committee. We have one here in the front row, David, who serves and has served for about 5 years on this important committee here at NASA. So NASA several years ago created model legislation for whistleblower programs to be established at the state level. We had an observation that the federal approach to whistleblower programs has a $1 million threshold, basically. In other words, it's not going to get the attention of the feds if the amount at stake is under $1 million. And my members saw this happening and said, what can we do to try and create a world where people with information that should be followed up on can bring it to someone and go from there. So we have several states at this point who have set up programs, and it's something we hope to build and expand on. And it's a thing to think about for this new federal market structure. We want to make sure that people with claims under $1 million have people to go to. The second model act that I will highlight here today, it's one I think we're fairly well known for. The model legislation was adopted in January 2016, and the Model Act is designed to mitigate financial exploitation of vulnerable persons. We are now up to 44 states in the United States that have report and hold law regimes where we've set it up so that broker-dealers and investment advisors, where they see someone being potentially harmed or actually harmed, either on a mandatory basis or a permissive basis, they can report that harm to state securities regulators and other entities within a state. There's data in our enforcement report this year. In recent years, we're trying to add in more data on the success of this program that shows another way that many of my members are learning about potential harm that they need to follow up on in any number of ways is through that collaboration referral system from industry to regulators.
Kind of turning to sort of the elephant in the room, would you talk a little bit more about NASA's ongoing efforts to secure potential improvements to the federal market structure legislation?
You bet. So we're grateful for the access, the interest that we've had with Senate offices across the political spectrum. We have legislation, as I highlighted, the SAFE Act 2.0, and we are working towards making it more evident, the list of senators who back it. Certainly conversations have been had, and we are confident and clear-eyed in our understanding that there is support. We are down in that process of building that list so it can be communicated. We've heard for a while now nonpartisan concern about making sure the Anti-Fraud Authority of the states is preserved in this new market structure. We are working through the steps that need to happen to make that, in fact, reflected in the text in a way that causes less concern for my members. It is the case that the present text has several references to state anti-fraud authority. how we communicated here and certainly on Capitol Hill, we're grateful for that. We acknowledge that. It would, in practice, result in the inability of my members to do a lot of the great work that we've highlighted here today.
So to follow up on that, how can people help with that effort?
Thank you. So the quick take is speak up somehow. Whatever tools in your bucket to do that. It can be as simple as following NASA on social media, liking, reposting it. It can be reaching out to me to have a conversation about, what template letter exists so I don't, have to do all the writing myself. We have resources you can consider using. We're very grateful to have had a group of academic scholars come together to raise awareness of NASA's positions on the RFIA. That letter was recently published. Piaba has put out a letter, and I will let processes play out, but I anticipate there will be several additional letters here in the next 2 weeks.
Recognizing you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think is going to happen with crypto from a regulatory perspective?
I am humble enough sitting in front of an SEC commissioner in the room to say I don't know. I think my sense, particularly having been in this space like Seth for about 4 years, in the trenches on Capitol Hill. This year is different, that the pace of everything is different, the content that we're looking at is getting edited more quickly, and so it's not, in some sense, we are taking this week by week, day by day. I will say I personally attended all the roundtables earlier this year that the SEC had. I enjoyed them, I learned from them. We are at NASA looking forward to the respectful collaborative dialogue we've had for years with the SEC, as I know they plan to continue creating opportunities for everyone in this room to weigh in on these important policy debates.
How has NASA engaged with the SEC's crypto task force?
Yeah. So we earlier this year submitted a document that outlined our responses to Commissioner Peirce's helpful questions. That document we put together by, as we often do at NASA, reaching out to our membership, creating structure and allowing information to flow up so that decision makers could decide what should we communicate at this time to the SEC. We had an opportunity to meet with the task force team and was very grateful for that time. In addition, we have monitored closely attending roundtables and the like. Both NASA has been present, and then several of our individual members, such as the DC member, have attended all these events.
This time I'd like to open up the floor for questions from the audience.
Thanks, Kristen. Could you speak a little bit about NASA's approach on the state preemption issue? NASA has signaled that it is comfortable with the NSMIA framework, which is something I've never heard NASA say, and something I probably have never said in my 17 years as Ohio Securities Commissioner, but I do think there's some recognition and acceptance by the state securities regulators that an exemptive framework is what is going to happen, and states can support this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You bet. So in the issue brief that we published in October, NASA included legislative text, which makes even more evident that we are committed to advocating with respect to market structure legislation, that we encourage the use of NSMIA and the benefits of it. There are processes around all of that, notice filings, fees, anti-fraud, et cetera, and we see value in having that in federal market structure legislation. We have reviewed the September 5th draft of the RFIA, and we do have what we believe are constructive comments to Section 109F and Section 109E. The quick take on them is that we are encouraging an effort to be narrow and clear about to what extent the SEC now has new authorities, and the authorities the states continue to have. As is always the case, we are laser focused on making sure we use everyone's money responsibly, and in a sense, what we're just trying to do is have as much clarity at the drafting stage about congressional intent, so there are no misunderstandings on the other side of this. I have had a moment to talk with some Senate offices, and I will say I did get one office saying, I never thought I would hear a NASA representative say you're comfortable with NSBA. I'm like, well, here you go. Here's the truth. We're in a new era for that. This is another area where please consider reaching out to me or Andrea or any members of our leadership and federal legislation committees. The presentation we're doing on Capitol Hill is about an hour long, so I won't endeavor to repeat it here today. But yes, do want to make crystal clear, we view that as a value add for the federal market structure, and to us it's a matter of collaborating on the exact way to write it.
Thank you, Kristen and Kelly. Great presentation. Going back to the video that you showed, which is really hard to watch, really hard to stomach, and shows a senior citizen losing $800,000 to a scam. We can vote, we can call our representatives, we can advocate in that way. But on the ground, in terms of protecting our senior citizens, protecting my parents, protecting my grandparents, does NASA have resources that just has very practical tips about how we can do that to ensure that our folks are not being scammed?
So, yes, and what I love about NASA is we're doing this in a way that tries to kind of meet people where they are. I'm a Zennial. I'm on social media. I use it. I like it, all of it. So I often see sometimes NASA's new resource when I go to LinkedIn or I go to X or I go to, go down the list, right? So for those within your families who just may be more open to social media, please consider pointing them to NASA's various handles. They are highlighted in one of the last slides here. And getting them to subscribe, and that's a great way just for staying on top of what we have. You can always come to our website. We have an entire area that says investor advisories, and that's our collection of resources where you can grab a link, send that to your family members. But notably, we are also in the field. One of the things I'm proud to talk about when I'm on Capitol Hill is my members, they're physically in every single state. They're at the YMCA, they're interacting with our AARP local chapter, they're on the radio, they're on local news. They have these conversations with families, they're, people at the grocery store, and they can, in real time, both educate and listen, and get the benefit of people's questions, bring that back, and it all filters up into NASA, and that's how we make those tough decisions about which investor advisories to do next.
I do a plug for Ohio does this as well. In addition to NASA, John Christ has been doing little video clips, and crypto is one of the many topics that he has been providing investor education on. And then behind me, our enforcement squad, Janice and Tim, they get out into the community. They go to senior centers and they go and pair up with local law enforcement because we have obviously seen and have discussed the last couple of years the uptick in crypto scam complaints that we field here at the Division of Security. So for our Ohio audience, if you want some local training and support, you can reach out to the division, and we would certainly either provide you materials or just come on site and provide training. Because that's right, I think fraud prevention is probably one of the strongest tools we have to combat crypto fraud, because when the money is gone, as we all know, it's gone and it's really difficult to recover it. So we want to prevent fraud rather than try to pick up the pieces afterwards.
Kristen, I'll ask one question. kind of approaching a slight political hot button issue of the federal shutdown. How is that affecting what's going on in your conversations on Capitol Hill these days? There was supposed to be the markup of RFIA a couple of days ago that obviously did not happen. Are you still having conversations with legislative staff, with regulatory agencies in greater DC, or kind of have things ground to a halt because of shuttered offices or thin offices in that sense?
Great question, and understand the curiosity. So I live on Capitol Hill, work near Capitol Hill, so I'm living it. There's less traffic these days on Capitol Hill right now. So we're having meetings. In a sense, the shutdown's actually given some staff more time to talk to us because they're not, handling some of the day-to-day work that needs to happen when Congress is in session and fully active. It varies whether staff are coming into the office or not. But yes, discussions are definitely ongoing on Capitol Hill. In terms of our federal counterparts, I guess a quick insight that I'll give is I was recently at DC FinTech Week, and I saw several of my counterparts who were there in their personal capacity, which was wonderful to see. I mean, there's genuinely a lot of excitement and interest in people who want to learn more about crypto and stay on top of it, and people are going to take advantage of those opportunities. Some of those staff don't have access to their emails right now, so, when I asked if you had an opportunity to take a look at NASA's issue brief, they can't, they can't get it in their email to see it. So, it's just some of those things that we're working through, but we are very grateful to have the interest of our federal partners in NASA's concerns about this legislation, and look forward to collaborating as we move forward.
Any other questions? See none. Well, thank you, Kristen Hutchins and Kelly Sackman. I think most folks in the audience probably are aware that Ohio is deeply involved in all things NASA. Commissioner Sight is a past president of NASA. I'm on a committee. Janice is on the committee. A lot of us are. So we always appreciate good work of Kristen and her colleagues at NASA. So with that, we're a couple of minutes ahead, but that's all right. We will go ahead and move on to our next panel, which will be the Division's Investigator Supervisor Tim Jones, BCI Special Agent Jason Snyder, and Butler County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Garrett Baker. They're going to talk about some fraud investigations involving cryptocurrency, and if I recall correctly, some successes that they have had in tracing crypto, stolen crypto, and seizing it and hopefully returning it to the victim. So, gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone. I think we'll do a quick introduction here, then we'll get into the slides. So again, my name is Tim Jones. I'm the supervising investigator for the state of Ohio Division of Securities.
Jason Snyder with Ohio Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Criminal Investigations.
And my name is Garrett Baker. I'm an assistant prosecutor at Butler County Prosecutor's Office. I'm the chief of the Economic Crimes Division.
So, Division of Securities, so we see a lot of cryptocurrency frauds that are coming in to our agency, and particularly a lot of the so-called pig butchering scams that would involve cryptocurrency with senior citizens, especially who are typically vulnerable to that as well. And Ohio, we are also a mandatory reporter here with the Division of Securities. So our licensees, they report to us any type of exploitation of any suspected elder abuse or anyone as a protected class, and they notify us as well. And so a lot of those are have cryptocurrency elements as well. So the Ohio Division of Securities, so the enforcement section, we get our statutory authority from 170736, which is under the Office of the Attorney Inspector, which we have her sitting in with us today. She's over in the audience, and it's Janice Hitzman. And so with our investigations, so we're not subject to public records requests, so all of our investigations are confidential by statute and are not subject, again, to public record, and only really see the light of day if it ever goes to court or any type of public hearing. So how prevalent are crypto scams? So I pulled some stats here from ISC3. So if anyone is familiar, ISC3 is an internet crimes reporting tool used by the Department of Justice and the FBI. So for 2024, there has been about $6.5 billion in total losses involving cryptocurrency, of which nearly $6 billion is just in crypto investment schemes. And that was been a 47% increase from the previous year, which is in 2023. And you can see it's been growing exponentially every year. And I'm curious to see, again, in February coming up, what 2025 looks like. I have a feeling, judging by our own stats and from our own division, that it is just going to keep growing. So you can see here, there's 123 million that was in cryptocurrency losses, 101 million in investment losses, and then 78 million in crypto investment losses, and this is just for the state of Ohio. So with division, so how we're able to take a look at this and the tools that we use. So we use some banking software that is has forensic nature to it. So we can use that and run through some account statements, and we can pull and extrapolate bank account data. We also have tools that we use to pull data off of cell phones. So with the cell phones, with the cryptocurrency scammers tend to like to communicate via cloud-based apps, such as Telegram and WhatsApp, or particular the top two. And so it's important for us to get those conversations off this phone, so we have to be able to do that, and of which Celebrate helps us do that. And as far as cryptocurrency tracing, Chainalysis is a tool that we also use. And again, anything that's cryptocurrency is publicly available. You can go onto a block explorer just on the through a website, and you can look at any transaction you want. But having a paid for service to be able to see that and put it into more of a readable format it's invaluable. So this is our stats that we had put together from 2024. So in 2024, we've had 46 division administrative orders, of which 17 had involved cryptocurrency, and about $1.2 million in losses. And you can see here, about 24% of our cases that we would investigate involve cryptocurrency. So it's a pretty significant amount. So getting into the particulars of the cryptocurrency fraud that we're seeing, so we typically see, like I said, the pig butchering element. So individuals will be contacted unsolicited through text message, email, sometimes even phone call, dating apps, social media. And these communications were pretty innocent at first, like, hey, this is my new phone number, and you have no idea who this person is. And so people tend to be nice in nature and say, oh, sorry, you have the wrong number. And these scammers will continue the conversation. And eventually, whatever method that had been communicated on initially, it will eventually move over into one of those cloud-based communication platforms. And the reason being, scammers love those communication platforms. There's a whole host of reasons, but a couple of big ones is the communication's encrypted. The companies that are hosting these platforms, they don't know what's being said. It's an encryption. And also to serviceability. Some of these companies are based overseas, so trying to get service as far as users, it's pretty difficult. And then also to, if the conversation is deleted on one party's end, it's deleted on the other end as well. So the conversation is gone. They rely on high pressure tactics. With these crypto investment scams, there's always a sense of urgency, and they have to follow a set of instructions. And they typically like to have screenshots from the victims, so that way they can prove that they're actually following their own steps they're outlining to the victims. And it just helps give a sense of legitimacy as well to these scams, that they're literally helping these individuals along and give them step-by-step support. So when it comes to what we're seeing, typically the bad actors, are operating out of Southeast Asia. So Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia is the three big ones that we've been seeing. And so I just pulled KK Park. It's like a well-known scammer compound out of Myanmar. And you'll see in the next slide that there's actual images of it. But so how these organizations work, they're ran by transnational organized crime. And so they'll put job postings out there on the internet for like these well-paying IT or social media jobs. And so they'll recruit individuals as far as Africa, India, or even the Philippines, and they'll travel into Southeast Asia. And the entry point typically is in Thailand. And then once in Thailand, they meet their so-called handlers. And their handlers then will take their passports and their IDs, and they'll move them over cross-border into one of those three countries. And once they're there, they're put into these compounds and sometimes even held against their will by threat of force. And so then they're there and they can't leave. So this is KK Park. So the image on the left is KK Park roughly in the beginning, early of 2020. And then on the right is about March of 2024. So you can see how much this one compound has grown extensively in that short amount of time frame. And every single building there houses individuals. And so just think about how many people they're contacting, how much money that one compound's bringing in. And there's many of these compounds throughout those three different countries. And as I said before, Thailand is the entry point. So they are really getting tired of like negative press due to this. And some of these compounds are literally across the border in about maybe 20, 30 minutes from the border. And they get a lot of their electricity from Thailand. So Thailand's actually doing a really good job right at the moment. And they're cutting off electricity supply to these different parts over in these other three countries. And so that is severely impacting the scammers' operations. Erin West, she operates Operation Shamrock. She used to be a prosecutor out of California, and she eats, sleeps, and breathes stick butchering. And so she actually went over to Myanmar to take a look at KK Park. And so KK Park, not only do they have a compound like this, but they also have their own concrete company where they can supply their own concrete for buildings. They have their own water treatment system, and they have their own electrical grid over there as well. So as I mentioned earlier, part of the pig butchering element is the first contact. Again, social media, text, email, dating apps are huge. And a lot of times they will send images pretty much similar to this. This is just something I just pulled together just using some tools. But so of course the lady there that's pictured, if you've received a picture from an individual like that, just completely unsolicited, can pretty much guarantee that that person that you're seeing there is not the person on the other end of the device. And that's another thing too. So scammers now, before the rise of AI, so to call it, they would never really have videos with the victims, or if there was like a video chat, video communication, it'd be like always blurry or very grainy. You can never really make out details of the person. But now with technology, there's real-time face overlay. So you can literally have a conversation with, say, Garrett down there, and he could actually overlay to look like that up there in the photo. It's kind of scary too, and even the voice changing elements of it. So nowadays, you really don't know who you're talking to online, so they're not really your friend unless you've met them in person. So again, with these pick-what-train scams, friendships are formed. A lot of times it's romantic, and I can't tell you how many times that these individuals are in relationships and well established in these scams because the amount of loss has severely impacted their marriage or their romantic relationship with their significant other, as this investment or the scam was not known to them. With this type of scam, the investment pitch, it could take weeks, it could take months. I've seen one go on as long as nearly 2 years before the investment pitch was actually made. They will wait as long as necessary to where they feel confident enough that you are willing to put some money up into these different types of scams. And they're really good at it. They figured out that they can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, right? So with these different scams, they will give enticement payments. So if you invest, say, $200 for the first go round, and if you're using these different fake investment platforms, and then you receive a return of 50%, they'll let you cash out that 50% return so that way you get a couple $100 back. This is going to legitimize the scam, and it's going to make you think this is real, and then you'll just send them more money. Typically, these investments, these scams, are done in cryptocurrency. It doesn't always have to be cryptocurrency, but there's always a cryptocurrency element behind it, or that the investment is being done in cryptocurrency. If you don't want to invest in cryptocurrency, they will gladly take your money through traditional wires. They'll have you wire it to an overseas account. They will send couriers out to your house to pick up cash. They'll even send out couriers to your house to pick up gold. If you have money, they will find a way to get it. So as I mentioned earlier, the enticement payments, the small amounts of money that you'll be able to get up front, helps legitimize the overall scheme, and you'll want to hopefully invest more money, and that's what they're counting on. And so many times individuals do, and then once the bulk of your funds go over there, whether it be your entire life savings or your 401k, and then when you hit whatever amount you want, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, and you want to withdraw it, well, they're going to tell you that you're going to have to pay taxes, you're going to have to pay fees, or a lot of times they'll even say you'll have to pay fines. The scammers will tell you when to buy and when to sell, and so then they'll try to correlate and spin it back to you, saying that, oh, this is insider trading, you have to pay now a fine. And of course, individuals that we deal with, they'll pay these fines, and they'll never get their money. But many of these actors are overseas. So at least for us, trying to initiate any type of criminal action is very, 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 very difficult. So where we come into this is we have the civil and administrative ability. So here's a real life example of a case that we've received. So we had a victim who invested $225,000. He was contacted by Caitlin Gow, which I can tell you that was not the real name of the individual. And the investment platform that they were investing in was that website that is listed there. And so the premise was that the funds that he was sending through whatever means, whether it be Coinbase or whatever one of the other exchanges or on-ramps, was supposed to be going to this investment platform. Well, the reality is it doesn't go there. Once it goes to a wallet address that the scammer, that the victim sent it to, it's rerouted to wherever their criminal organization is being held at. Many times they'll go through 10, 12, 15, 20 different wallets before it goes to where it needs to go, and then they wash the funds through various means. So we were able to establish that there was enough here for us to take administrative order. We took an administrative order, and the investor here was able to recover $25,000. So again, that's nowhere near $225,000, but that is at least something. That is something that the investor can then use going forward for potential bills or any type of living expenses that they would not otherwise had. And so a little bit about the Ohio Investor Recovery Fund. So the $25,000 that the individual was able to get back was due to the Ohio Investor Recovery Fund. And this was one of Andrea's pet projects for years, and she was able to get it approved. And so this is not taxpayer money. This is money that we receive from licensing fees and registration fees for the division. So the fund, it is available for up to 25% of a monetary injury or $25,000, whichever is less. And there are certain other requirements that are applicable. And I think the slide may have been removed, so my apologies on that one. But there is certain qualifications that need to be met in order to be qualified for this fund. As of October 20th, we've paid a little over $2 million out of the fund. And we've had 130 different applications for the fund. And you can see down there, about $132,000 and some change was related to cryptocurrency scams. And so for the fund, there are different qualifications, but we have to take an action for the case or be involved in a criminal investigation. And they do have to be an Ohio resident. A few others. And if you feel like that anyone you know may be a victim of any type of crypto investment scheme, our contact information is up there, or feel free to jot that down and pass it along or save it for future reference. And I believe now it is PCI's turn.
Good morning. So the Attorney General's office started this new unit, Electronic Financial Investigation, unit, about 2 years ago. We're coming up to that. So we started the unit with a rough idea of what we needed, but we didn't know we had all these other questions. Eventually, we worked with the Florida Department of, or Florida Law Enforcement and sort of modeled theirs. Here's what we came up with. The unit has several different pieces to it. So we have agents like myself that actually do the investigation, interview people, things like this. We have a forensic accountant that helps us with the blockchain, and also if we run into anyone going to say that they own the funds, they can go through the records, bank records, whatever it is. We have a cyber person So a lot of these times, everybody communicates through their phones or cells. So we have an agent that does that, so we can download those and analyze them to make sure that the individual victim didn't have a bad investment, hit the wrong number, those long hash keys that have like 24 to 32 characters. We had to verify that those aren't the problem, that they did have communication with a bad actor. So we have, like I said, several people that work these cases together as a unit, and that's all we do. So in typical case flow, as you see here, we start off with the Attorney General's Office, BCI, has to receive a case from a law enforcement agency, so prosecutor's office, sheriff's office, the police department. From there, they request us to do the case. We have jurisdiction then we can do the case. We can either help them with the case, like some agencies have, like detectives or investigators that like to do these cases, or we do the case from the very first part of it to the very end. It's up to the agency, and they request us. We do have times where a victim calls our unit. What we do is we usually do a courtesy call to the jurisdiction, and we help them request if they like our services to system in that case. So we can get any way, but we have to have the actual law enforcement agency ask us to do the case. So some of the basic things we ask for the investigators, even from the victim, is this information here. It gives us a start. I know we've talked about a lot of BTM purchases. We like that receipt as quickly as we can. We do have several computer systems that do the blockchain analysis. We have Clue, now we just started TRM. So we can actually start following the funds to hopefully an exchange or a company that works with the United States. So this is a case example of a pig butchering. This one here, the individual bought a new computer. She didn't have good software for malware, antivirus. So she got a pop-up saying, hey, your computer's infected. She communicated with them on the phone. They were very convincing, so she went to her local banks and started withdrawing funds, going to ATMs and depositing the funds, going overseas. Typically, when they go to a BTM, they start off with a Bitcoin. That's an actual coin. And a lot of the bad actors, when it hits their wallet, will change it over to what's called a token. So like Circle, Tether, something like this, because it doesn't fluctuate as much as Bitcoin does. So when we go on the blockchain, we follow it, and most time we see it hop, they call it, change over from one coin to another. So in this case, she continued on taking money out from her bank account until she started into a bank account that was a joint account with her husband. Like, wait, what are you doing? At that point, she was already pretty deep in it. They talked to the bank itself and some employees actually, and this whole time, the individual bad actors are on the phone with her, making sure she's at the BTM doing the correct thing, making sure she's going to the bank, tell her, don't worry about it, I'm saving out this $10,000 for an investment. Don't worry about it. And the bank teller is like, let me talk to him. And as soon as she started talking to the bad actor, they hung up. They went to the local sheriff's office and they contacted our agency. And this is a typical, the bottom you see here is a typical graph of the blockchain. That this one here was Clue. And we followed it through into an exchange called Binance. They're the largest exchange, as I recall, currently. We contacted Binance. They actually said that this account holder changed over the money to another type of coin, which was called Tether, token actually. And then we can contact with Tether. Tether owns their own blockchain, essentially. There's more to it. But they basically own their own blockchain. We contacted them, and through the FBI, we've actually stopped the coins from going any further. Those tokens are now in basically possession of BCI through the FBI. So instead of going to an exchange like a bank, like we normally do and seize the whole account, in this particular one, we actually went to the actual processor, the one that creates the actual token. And we've actually seized that and working with the local prosecutor to give those funds back to the victim. The hunt for these stolen crypto is when we get a case, we automatically get into blockchain to follow it, and hopefully we get to an exchange or a place where we can get the money. Only about half the exchanges out there work with the United States. So it's difficult. We sort of keep a running list of ones that will talk to us and ones that won't talk to us. Some will talk to us, but won't give us anything unless we have an MLAT, which is few and far between. But if they do work with us and they do give us the availability to get the account, we then petition the courts through whichever jurisdiction it is, whichever county it is, to the prosecutor's office to get a search warrant to take those assets out of that account and put them into an account and storage with BCI until the prosecutor continues on, which we'll get that here in a moment. Well, from there, we sort of store it and wait for those orders.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this is our cold storage. So we actually use initially put everything to either a ledger or a treasure. They are a cold storage unit that goes into our actually evidence room, and it stays in the evidence room until we move it over to Coinbase to get to the victim. And we can give it in two ways to the victim, which we'll get into a little more detail here in a minute. We can give it back to the coin that we have it in, because like I said, they change from like Bitcoin to Tether to Circle, whatever the case may be. Or we can give them an actual state Ohio check, which we would do is we sell those coins at that current market value, and then take those proceeds and give those to the victim through the court.
Summary. My name's Garrett Baker, like I introduced before. I'm the head of Butler County's Economic Crime Division. I handle all the economic crime cases, employee theft, a lot of embezzlements, some securities fraud cases, don't do a lot of those, a lot of identity fraud cases, some corrupt, pattern or corrupt activities, had a handful of those, and basically any financial crime case that a docket prosecutor doesn't want to do anything with. You give a docket prosecutor stacks of bank records and they will run away. They would prefer to do 3 murder cases versus 1 economic crime case. It just becomes a nightmare for them. I think a lot of docket prosecutors get used to whether it be assault or drug cases or these kinetic things that aren't extremely complicated. And unfortunately, crypto is complicated to a lot of folks. It's interesting for me because it's kind of this middle part in a Venn diagram between finance, technology, and law, which if you don't like those 3 areas, you're not going to want to touch it, really. You'll kind of run away from it. So regarding the crypto stuff, how I got involved in it is about 3 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago, but it feels like a decade in terms of crypto theft cases. I got a call from a Trenton detective who let me know that he had a victim that lost about $55,000 in cryptocurrency theft. This individual had went to a BTM. BTM is a Bitcoin ATM for those that don't know. I'm assuming everybody here probably knows, but this individual went to a Bitcoin kiosk or Bitcoin ATM, put, like I said, $55,000 in. It went to various wallets, approximately 4 different wallets. 3 of those wallets were unnamed wallets. It's kind of an old terminology that's used there, but that's what we were calling it. Basically, these were wallets that weren't connected to an exchange, where we couldn't link a particular individual to. I would say the lion's share of the money went to these unnamed wallets, probably 95% of it. So there was a small portion that was linked to an exchange, though. Very de minimis amount, but I talked to the detective and kind of had conversations going back and forth, like, is this even worth doing, given the de minimis nature of it? But I wanted to experiment. I wanted to see, hey, could I actually get this back? If this is happening now, because my thought was, if this is happening now, who's to say in like 3 months from now, I get one where it's $1 million, where it's something we are going to want to do, and I haven't tried out or formulated a plan in terms of how we're going to be able to get this. So I worked with the detective, and I thought, hey, let's think about some different ways where we could try to get this money back, or try to get this property back. I shouldn't say money. try to get this property back. And it came down to about 3 different options, right? So the first is the thought, when you talk to a prosecutor about doing search warrants and seizing assets, the immediate thing that jumps out at you is criminal forfeiture, right? Whether it be a drug dealer and the police raid the drug dealer's home, they find tons of cash, tons of guns, property, you immediately want to go towards criminal forfeiture. So thought maybe consider that. Also civil forfeiture. That's an option too, a little bit outside the realm of what I traditionally would do as a prosecutor. And then the third option was this method I found after doing some research about photograph and release. Not a new method, but new in this context, right? So thought about criminal forfeiture. There's some predicates for criminal forfeiture, right? You've got to have somebody charged. You have to have a named defendant. And you have to have a charging instrument, and you have to provide a specification in that charging instrument which articulates the property you're trying to seize, and along with that goes a notice requirement. It goes to due process, right? You can't just take some things without the owner, and that's what we're going to get to later, the owner being notified of it. So consider that. And there's some problems with that. I'm never going to have a defendant. Never. I am never going to be, these folks that are involved in this, as Tim described, this is all transnational crime. This is all somebody that's a slave in Thailand, somebody that's been misled, or some bad actor, whether they be in Thailand, India, China. So I'm never going to get that person. Like I said, even if I do get that person, who's to say they're not a victim, right? So the likelihood I get a person to charge, it's pretty much non-existent. The KYC that you get from exchanges, the quality of it varies. Some exchanges get pretty good KYC. Some get a name and an email address, which is effectively absolutely useless. Forfeiture. Once again, you start to have the same issues, right? You have to notify a third party, both with criminal forfeiture and civil forfeiture. There's a right to a jury trial that attaches with that. And I'm telling you, this is a cumbersome process to begin with. I would say it takes maybe 3 to 6 months to even secure the cryptocurrency when we start. I don't know what your estimate would be on that, but from what I've seen, it varies between 3 to 6 months because it's a long, drawn-out process. You are law enforcement, BCI. They're subpoenaing they're reaching out to the exchange. First, they do the tracing software, which lets you know which exchange has the money. Then they're getting KYC information based on whoever the owner of that wallet is. Right, so now you're eating up a month, 2 months. Now you're at the point of doing a search warrant where you got a 14-day freeze on this if you're lucky, if the exchange is even willing to do that, right? So that starts to eat up time. You've got to get the search warrant, which I tend to review those and work with BCI for reasons I'll kind of get into later. I think a lot of prosecutors can take a laissez-faire approach and say, hey, you're law enforcement, you're BCI, you generate the search warrant. I like to have eyes on it. It's just kind of my personality. Because this is all going to go to a judge and we're going to need to explain to the judge, I want to make sure everything's right. So like I said, that process, you're eating up a ton of time. So you start talking about civil forfeiture where you're sending out notices in the newspaper for a bad actor that's in Thailand. It makes absolutely zero sense. It's just kind of gets into bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake, right? I just saw no real benefit to it. We can trace this back to the victim as far as I'm concerned, as soon as the victim puts their money into a BTM and that gets converted into cryptocurrency, that victim holds title to that. I look at it no different than if somebody steals a car, right? So the victim puts their money into a BTM, that gets converted into Bitcoin or whatever, and we can trace that. Why am I giving notice to a third-party bad actor? Makes zero sense. So that's kind of how I landed on this idea of photograph and release. For folks who don't know what photograph and release is, when the police, maybe they catch a bad actor like a thief that steals your cell phone, right? Say your cell phone gets stolen on Monday, the police find it on Tuesday, that bad guy, girl, whoever, gets arrested, they're booked in, they're arraigned, your phone is still in the property room. You want your phone. Your life is on your phone. You want to get that back. So what you do if you're the victim is you complain to the prosecutor and say, hey, the police got my phone, I want my phone back. Say, okay, so what I'll do, after you get those calls, you file a motion for photograph and release. Like, we don't need the contents of the phone as the state. You just need a picture of it. Yes, that's a fair and accurate depiction of the property that was stolen, right? And we get this motion granted by the court, get an order, release the property back to the victim, and they can go on their way. We still preserved it for our purposes in terms of prosecution. So, unfortunately, law is about 10 to 15 years behind technology. So what I started to do is kind of repurpose this. So I use this statute in conjunction with the criminal rules. Now the criminal rules talk about physical property. Once again, law is not keeping up with technology. But the ORC says any property. If you're saying any property, to me that's crypto. And I think this is, I took this from a case and I think it accurately describes the intent, I guess, the legislative purpose of Criminal Rule 26 is a theft offense is a crime which deprives one of the possession of his property to prolong that deprivation by holding it until a criminal trial and all available appeals are exhausted would circumvent the entire purpose of Criminal Rule 26. You're essentially re-victimizing a victim. You tell that victim, yeah, we got your stuff, but we need to have a trial to give it back to you. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? You got my stuff. You need to have a trial. You saw this. You did all this work. You filed all the motions. You traced it. It doesn't make any logical sense. So that's kind of what I settled on. And we've had great success in this. Like other folks have mentioned, a lot of this goes back to computer viruses that people get. It's either text messages or computer viruses. Here's one example we had in Butler County. It was a computer virus. Victim called up the scammer, gave him access to the computer and their bank account. Interesting side note about this. One thing I'm seeing is that scammers don't necessarily want to manipulate somebody's bank account. I think, and this is just my educated guess, they are trying to get access to see if it's even worth talking to you. If you only have $500 in your bank account and they see that, that phone's getting hung up. But if you're an elderly person and they verify that you've got a trust account that your bank account's linked to, or you've got over $100,000, that call is going to keep going. They're going to transfer you to their fraud specialist, who then is going to transfer you to somebody else. And in America, we are used to being pushed around by companies, and that seems natural. So then people see that, they've got fear going in the back of their mind, they're freaked out because their account's been misused, right? That's what they're being told. They get pushed around by customer service. They're like, oh, this seems normal. So it adds some credence and credibility to the scammers. So that's the type of thing that happens. And in this one, the victim gave the scammer bank account information. Scammer verified that they were worth talking to. They told the victim they needed to take the money, send bid cards, go to a BTM. They will actually, I believe, they actually look on CoinRadar and see if a BTM is close to a potential target. That case that I had in Trenton, a BTM had just went up, I think, a month or two before that. So the scammers are using all these different data points to figure out who to target, some being where BTMs are located. And I will tell you, when a new BTM goes up, I get a phone call from that jurisdiction because that means somebody else just got scammed and they went down there. It happened in Oxford with a student that put $98,000 into a BTM because they thought they were getting deported by ICE. Unfortunately, that's just what's happening. So this case, we were able to return about $18,000 to the victim out of a loss of $27,000. Once again, using this method of photograph and release. You can see it there. I blacked out some stuff, probably blacked out more than I needed to, but that's how lawyers are. Better safe than sorry. Here's one that we just had about 2 weeks ago. Once again, this is a case we worked on for about 6 months. It's a wild amount of time to spend on one case, dealing with the exchanges. So yeah, in this case, the victim, same thing. She had a computer virus, freaked out, gives scammers the access to her computer. They see that her account is unfortunately linked to a trust account. She then gets that. She takes out way more money than she should have. We were able to return, give her a check for $36,000 last Friday. Very happy. Part of that, they helped out. It's bittersweet for her because it was linked to a trust account that multiple people should have benefited from in her family. She's very embarrassed, not want her information broadcast, does not want her name out, understandably so. So I've withheld that. But so we've had success in Butler County. I have reached out to other prosecutors. BCI has reached out to prosecutors who were kind of flustered, directed them to me. And
Thank you.
yes.
Really, not to use the name.
Yeah. But it's become kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you don't have the legislature doesn't really have your back and they're not providing you with tools, what you do is you rely on precedent. So basically what I've done is started to kind of make my own precedent by talking to other prosecutors. So you'll see here is a judge from Franklin County who released $128,000 via the method of photograph and release. Then you see one in Hamilton County. It was 18 ETH. I don't know what it converted to, 41,000. I just got a call from a prosecutor in Montgomery County a few days ago. She's like, "Oh, this seems pretty easy." I was like, "Absolutely not. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to have to fall into the rabbit hole because it's worth it, right?" I think prosecutors, lawyers in general, you want to help people. You want to find solutions to problems that are complex, and I've really enjoyed my experience in being able to do that. Because you have a bunch of victims that these people, they lose significant amounts of money. And you're able to give them a return to that. And it's their life savings. It's their retirement, right? So I'm happy about it. And then you get into, and I'm going to go quick on that, you get into the messy stuff, which is tornado wallets. People have varying views on tornado wallets. But it's essentially a way to commit money laundering, right? Bad actor sends the money to a company, the company obfuscates it, creates multiple different wallets, they combine it into one wallet, the bad actor gets it. You'll see on the Blockchain Explorer, I had a case where you see the different portions of it. It's always the same thing, like $220, $220, $220. That is a signal that a tornado wallet is being used, right? And I don't know what the status of those are. I think there's some prosecutions, some non-prosecutions. Either way, you just know it's bad actors, right? Big logistical concerns, there's delay. The delay equals more wallet hops, exchange compliance. Then you have officers who want the more kinetic option of just taking a BTM and a blowtorch or a chainsaw, breaking it open and saying, "I don't understand why we're going through lawyers. We can just rip this bad boy open and give the victims their money back." I view when the money goes into a BTM, I view it almost like transubstantiation, right? As soon as the money goes in, I don't know if it's Catholic or what, but it's like water into wine, same type of thing. Once that money goes into a BTM, it's no longer the victim's money at all. And there is one case out of West Hartford, Connecticut, where that's essentially what happened. A judge said, you can't do that. And that, I believe, was with Bitcoin America. I'm not sure what the BTM was, but anyways, challenges being, and I finish it with, most scammers aren't in the United States. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think the more people know about it, the better. Unfortunately, with victims, scammers prey on fear, greed, love, and lust, and are able to pry funds out of them. So, yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna add a little bit to that real quick. On the BTMs, a lot of the companies, if the victim provides a police report, will refund the services fees, and sometimes it can be up to like 25%. So at least it's something back for the victim. So we really had some success with that.
Yeah.
Another one is we were seeing an uptick in, like they were saying earlier, of people coming by and picking up gold and cash. We're seeing actually an uptick in that. So if you see somebody driving up and grandma's out there with they actually tell them to put them in a shoebox. That's probably a scam. So that was those little caveats I wanted to add there. So thank you.
Questions?
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right. So first of all, I want to say thank you to the panel and thank you for all of you for being boots on the ground. As somebody who works in this area, it is heartbreaking to see people lose money. And I have kind of an aspirational question for all of you. I think everybody working in this arena knows that there are bad people who fall through the cracks because we don't have resources or legislative support or whatever. So if you could wave a magic wand and get the resources that you need, additional resources, legislation, what would you ask for in order to be more effective at what you do?
I think, it's great to have BCI provide tracing software. They're a fantastic resource. I direct a lot of law enforcement to BCI just because they get overwhelmed. It would be nice if funds were allocated, at least to prosecutors' offices, to be able to purchase, or even other local law enforcement, county, whatever, to be able to have that tracing software so they don't get overwhelmed. Because I know BCI's reached a point where they're starting to, I don't know if you want to discuss it or not, probably shouldn't put it out.
I don't say it, I'll be drunk.
But there's dollar amounts, right? Agencies start to have to provide cutoffs where if it's under 25,000, under 50,000, they just don't have the manpower and the resources to be able to do it. So it would be nice if, whether it be sheriff's offices had a fund where they could go and purchase this for the county to use. Because the tracing software, it's so significant. I mean, I can dork around on Blockchain Explorer and see where the money's going, but that's not saying what exchange it's hitting, right? That's why you need the software. And for my purposes, I honestly would like to do, I would like to have some secondary software just to verify. I'm kind of belt and suspenders type person, but whatever. When you go to a judge and you say this money came from XYZ, and that judge trusts you and your credibility's on the line, I want to make sure I am 1,000% right on it. So I think in terms of assistance, local law enforcement being able to purchase their own tracing software without breaking the bank or having to rob Peter to pay Paul would be nice. That's my view.
Yeah. Just to clarify, BCI will help everybody. We may just say, hey, this is $500. Here's some documentation you could probably send to these places. We'll do the graph and everything. But I'm not saying there's a dollar amount, but we will work with you no matter what. The other one I would go with was the BTMs. We're seeing way too much. I say probably 30 to 40% of my cases that we receive here at BCI are attached to BTMs in some way. And a lot of them have a limit of like $10,000, but it's $10,000 a transaction. It's not $10,000 a day. And if it is, it's still $10,000. I'd like to see, if I could just do that magic wand real quick, I would try to establish some type of policy procedure, whatever it could be for those companies, to say, okay, you can only have $2,000 a day, because why would you want, it's not, I don't see the benefits of BTMs as an investment avenue, because right off the top of the bat, you're losing 20% usually. When you put that money, those funds in, you're losing 20%. I don't know how you would see that as an investment. So I would say, hey, $2,000 a day, that's it. Per person, per account, per day, period. Just so you can't pay taxes with it, or you can do whatever you want. But if I had that magic wand, that's what I would say.
I think that also brings up the question of, why folks use BTM. I stopped in it's not a gas station, it was like a convenience store where I live, because I saw a new BTM went there. And I was like, what in the heck's going on? Why is there a BTM here? So I started to talk to the guy that owns the place, and I just chit-chat, and he says, well, I get $300 a month for this. It's like, okay. I said, well, what's the typical profile of people that are coming and using this? He said it varies. He said, looks like some folks that don't have access to the traditional banking system. I think that's a small percentage. He says sometimes you see the old ladies that pull up a chair and start piping money in. And then he tells me, he says, there's one guy, there's a truck driver that comes in about once a week with a duffel bag. And he starts a black duffel bag, and he starts piping it in. So the question becomes, who's giving the truck driver that duffel bag? And that's where you start to get into the organized crime element of things. And it is the most, and I'm not saying anything that anybody does not know, it is the most efficient way to launder money. They are not, the KYC that, if you can even call it that the BTMs are getting, it's not significant. So I think that's the concern. If you're looking at a 30,000-foot view from a law enforcement standpoint of these BTMs, it's how these things are being used, right? There is an element of it of if the dollar amounts, if there was a limit on the dollar amounts, it would provide folks time to reflect on their decisions. And I think that's accurate. I think I've talked to victims that have said, if you gave me another day or two, maybe I would have reached out to a loved one. Maybe I would have slept on it, woke up in the morning and thought, what the hell did I just do? And then they wouldn't have been out so much money. So I think that's a valid point.
And looking at it from a different lens, since we're looking at it more from a regulatory standpoint rather than law enforcement. So a large part of what we do is we reach out and try to verify these fraudulent websites and who's behind them. So it'd be nice if there was actual requirements for like web registrants or hosting services to require X amount of information from these individuals or companies creating these websites. And so as of right now, it's a patchwork of different information you're getting, and it's not always more than just a first and last name, which could honestly be made up, and a lot of times it is. You'll get first name AAA, last name of CCC.
All right, well, Tim, Jason, Garrett, thank you all so much.